Welcome everyone. So today I want to talk about successful people habits and how we need to understand how survivorship bias plays a role into that. So let's get started. So being extremely successful is risky. To be first, you sacrifice being the last one. To be first, you sacrifice being ridiculed. To be first, you sacrifice and risk losing everything. Many people want to be the best in whatever they do, but a lot of them are not willing to put in that work or not willing to take that risk to be the best. Being that at the top is risky and has a low probability. It's risky because it's like a mini claw machine. You can give it a lot of output, meaning money, but you might never get that input, the toy. Crazy successes such as Jeff Bezos and Dalio are exactly like this. You can give it a lot of output, energy, effort, time, but you may never get the input, money, fame, followers, vision, dream. I believe in working hard, putting in the effort, dreaming big, but I'm referring to the crazy successes as in billionaires, visionaries, and shapers of society. These type of people sometimes have the levels of successes because they will risk everything, hoping to win. Let's focus on entrepreneurship, which one of those fields where it's winner take all. What if I told you that I could predict who the next Jeff Bezos will be? Or Steve Jobs, or Elon Musk? In many industries and ways of life, success can be attributed to randomness or luck. However, in the entrepreneurship world, the success can be mostly attributed to a set of thinking ways and systems that they had in place way before we knew them as these visionaries and billionaires. When I say they're crazy successes, I'm referring to the accomplishment of a aim or purpose. For instance, it's an easy prediction to make that Jeff Bezos will do what he has always done. He will attempt to move faster, make bolder bets, and pursue both big inventions and small ones, all to achieve his grand vision for Amazon. And you can mimic everything that Jeff Bezos had done. You might end up living in the streets. So, what's the difference? I've noticed that the same traits that lead to success also lead to failure. If you think exactly like Jeff Bezos and imitate his habits and routines, that does not mean that you will become as successful as him or build the next Amazon. We can take the most successful entrepreneurs over time and study their habits and learn what they do to become what they are. This is exactly the problem with successful people's studies and books. You only study the ones who became successful, and you don't take into the account the ones who fail and had the same habits, routines, mindsets, and etc. This is known as survivorship bias. This is also why most studies are done incorrectly, because they fail to take into account the other part of the population, making the samples biased and not random. Let's say the top 10 basketball players practice super hard, usually over 100 hours per week. Concluding that if you practice over 100 hours per week, you will become an outstanding basketball player is not right, because we didn't count the ones who worked plus 100 hours and did not make the team. We simply didn't know if the 10 players we picked had a personal trainer, a family member in the team, or if his dad was the owner of the team. Successful entrepreneurs are successful because of their mindset of taking risks and promising bets. If we don't know anyone who failed miserably using this framework, we might think that if we take big risks, we will succeed. Because, that's what these billionaires did. Sure, that's what they did. But concluding that if you take risky bets, you will succeed is wrong. Remember survivorship bias? There's a probability, but it's very, very low. So to illustrate this point, I found these two inspiring entrepreneurs, Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, and Ray Dalio, a famous investor. We can compare them and we find many similar traits. They wake up early, they work hard, they're positive, they take risk, they're resilient, get determined, and many other traits that are similar. And these stories are great, and they might increase your probability of succeeding as well as increasing your probability of failing. This sounds a little that sounds a little, that seems like it could be contradictory, but it's really not. Let me explain. So, in the early 1990s, Jeff Bezos had a high-paying job on Wall Street. He and his wife were comfortable and living a good life. However, Bezos saw the new opportunities with the internet and started an internet startup in Seattle. He quit his fabulous job and risked his money, time, efforts to make his dream a reality. He, as we know, did pretty well. The other entrepreneur runs the biggest hedge fund in the world, Ray Dalio. He may seem like a successful investor, which he is, but that wasn't the case at all. So in 1992, Dalio thought the global economy was going to massively fail, and he traded accordingly. Not only was he wrong, but the stock market began a bull run for the next 2 years. For the next 20 years. He was forced to lay off all of his employees and ask his family for money, as he couldn't even afford rent. Dalio is a great example of how taking big risk also leads to big failure, and not exclusively to success. This failure pushed Dalio to keep getting better and understand what he had failed. This experience led him to become one of the most successful hedge fund managers in history. So, what's the bottom line then? If the same traits that lead to success also lead to failure, what can I do? So here's where it gets interesting. And to explain this point, I will use a bell curve, also known as a normal distribution. So like this point what you see. So in the 95% is where most people are. People who have an average life. To get to 100%, we need about 5%. And this 5% of people are approximately split in half. 2.1% in the lower end and 2.1% in the upper end. To avoid confusion, I will use 2.5%. The crazy successes are in the upper 2.5%. This is where we find people who are the most successful on the planet. This is where we find people who risk everything. Who risk everything and who risk to be in the lower end to be at the top. In a Tim Ferriss show interview with author and personal finance advisor Ramit Sethi, the host Tim asks Rami what they both disagree on. Ramit says the following habits and routine for successful people is meaningless. He says that he doesn't have any morning routine and likes to check his phone first thing in the morning. He uses the example of Michael Jordan and says that if he were to follow his morning routine and wear the same shoes, he would not become or do what Michael Jordan did. I slightly disagree with Ramit, and he's right in a sense that blindly following other people's routines and habits, hoping to become like them, is insignificant and hollow. However, if you follow Jeff Bezos' routines and habits and mindset, you increase your probability of ending up in the upper 2.5%. Again, it doesn't mean that you will end up there. In fact, it also increases your probability of ending up where Dalio once did, in the lower 2.5%. We say that people risk being the last one to be number one It's because there's no middle ground for these people. This framework is not for everyone. It's for those crazy and aspirational people who want to change the world. So, one time I was Snapchatting with a female friend. I was telling her how she should be extreme and take risks to be the best and maybe end up in the upper 2.5%. Well, I didn't say that. That would have been weird. I even said, extreme people also equal to extreme results. And she responded, "I'm not extreme." And that was a big turnoff. But most importantly, it was a moment when I realized that not everyone is being interested in being the best or being number one. I couldn't get it. So people's aversion to risk, it's very different, and it determines the outcomes in life. Not everyone's willing to take laughable, crazy risk, and this is what you need to understand for yourself. If you ask yourself these two questions, what are my goals, dreams, and what's my risk tolerance? And these two single questions will determine how you will live your life. And really, if you're interested in being at the top in whatever you do, your risk tolerance needs to be quite high. So that way, after you put in the work and effort, you might increase your probability of ending up in the upper 2.5 as Jeff Bezos and Ray Dalio, as well as ending up in the lower 2.5 as Ray Dalio once did. At the end, it's all about risk tolerance and your willingness to get there. Thank you.